Right, so first of all, I wanted to say sorry if you hear any background noise. It's currently like 26 degrees and it's getting warmer and warmer. So I'm about to perish in here. But so if you hear any background noise from my ventilator, I'm sorry. But I also wanted to say sorry for this heinous thumbnail of Victini, but I thought it was pretty funny. But back to the video itself. As you saw by the atrocious thumbnail, this week's Pokemon is Victini. And just like last week's Pokemon, Tapu Koko, this video will be covering two gens, Generation 7 and Generation 8. Victini has a pretty adequate stat total of 600, where every stat has 100 points. While this is the same like most smaller mythical Pokemon, Victini seems to be able to use it a bit better than other Pokemon. This is mainly thanks to its amazing move pool. Victini gets 180 base power stab move in V-Create, which is ridiculously strong. And it also gets the signature moves from Zekrom and Reshiram. Those are Bolt Strike and Blue Flare. It also gets the weaker variant of those moves, Fusion Bolt and Fusion Flare, but I would just use the stronger versions. And you might be thinking that you prefer the weaker ones because they are more accurate, but Victini's ability boosts the accuracy of all your moves and those on your team. This is of course as long as Victini is on the field. Furthermore, it also gets access to Dragoon, which is sometimes useful, but the 100 base speed makes that a little bit more difficult. It also gets Final Gambit for those WU players out there, and lastly it gets Celebrate, which doesn't look really useful. Let me pull it up here. But it actually is. Those who played Gen 7 probably know. Why? Because if you use the Z Celebrate, like the Z version of it, the Z move, it boosts all your stats with +1, which is pretty damn good. Before I go on to the sets, I first wanted to give some recommendations for a partner Pokemon that can use Victini's ability quite well. Alright, so first we got Mega Blastoise with Hydro Pump and Focus Blast. It of course boosts the accuracy of those moves, but you also have a pretty nice type combo in Water and Fire, so that's something I always find pretty nice. Especially since Blastoise gets Follow Me and Fake Out, which really helps with setting up Z Celebrate if you want to go for that. Greninja is also a pretty good partner Pokemon. While it of course gives you that nice Fire-Water combo again, it also provides good support that goes both ways. You have the Victini boosting the accuracy of Hydro Pump, Blizzard or even Gunk Shot if you want it. But the Greninja also learns Med Block, which is actually great support for setting up Z Celebrate. These two Pokemon I just recommended are mostly for 2v2. Since WU is such a wide range of Pokemon you can combine it with if that's what you want, and I thought it would make the video only longer, so these two combos are mostly for 2v2 also, although like if you really want to use them in WU, of course you can, like nothing is stopping you. Now in terms of sets you can use, I got these here, I got 5. First I'm start with the 2v2 sets, which are also 5 on WU by the way, but let's move on to the first one here, which is the Z moveset. Everything about this is pretty clear, I think. It has the Z move, as I said, for its Z Celebrate, it has 2 strong moves, and it has Protect. Maybe the most notable thing is that it's an adamant nature and not a jolly one, but that's because I assume you are gonna get up your Z move, and that brings you your speed actually to 448. If you get the Z move off, which is more than enough. You can run Jolly, since it doesn't really matter a lot, but it's more about preference, and my preference lays with Adamant, but if you're more of a Jolly guy, go for that. Then we also got, let me find it, there we go, a Scarf set here, which is basically the same, but it's 4 attack now. If you are wondering why U-turn is on here, no, I didn't make the same mistake as I did with Tapu Koko last video. It is because of Hoopa, and you don't really have a fourth move slot, fourth move to fill the move slot with. There we go. But all of the same stuff basically also applies here. And these are the two 2v2 sets I got going on here, and now we move on to double OU. First we got, this is quite a strange set and maybe not the most viable, but it's a Trick Room set, which is a bit strange with its speed stat, I admit, but in reality, if you are 0 IV, 0 EV and a minus speed nature, you're slow enough with most Pokemon actually for a Trick Room. Even if your base stat is 100, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And then again, a pretty self-explanatory moveset here. Then we go to my favorite, my personal favorite set, which is the Bandit set. This set is ridiculously strong. I mean, a Bandit Step V-Create, which is 180 base power step. I mean, that's pretty strong, let me tell you. This can kill a lot of stuff, especially if you want sun support on this, then it's even more crazy. And lastly, we got the final Gambit set here, which you can't use in 2v2 by the way, since it's banned there, I believe. Either way, this is a max HP set, since that has to do with how much damage Final Gambit does. Of course, max speed to make sure you go first with Final Gambit, because well, otherwise there's no point in using it. And then you got some filler moves, and that's basically it. We are now at Gen 8, and while not a lot has changed for Victini, besides that C-Celebrate doesn't exist anymore, he is actually in a very different position now, since he dropped from double OU to double UU, and you might think I will now talk about its position in double UU instead of double OU, but yeah, WU is that, and it's pretty fun in double OU, so I'm gonna talk about double OU and 2v2 of course, but mostly double OU. Before I go into the sets, I got the bases already out of the way in the first part of the video, but I wanted to say that in terms of the sets, not much has changed. What did change are the Pokemon Victini is now up against, so I will be primarily talking about those. But these are the sets in case you're wondering that I would recommend running if you want to. But I'll touch on the Trick Room set a little bit later, that is quite a strange set, I admit. To start off with the Pokemon Victini is now up against, I have a premier victim for Victini, which is Rillaboom. I don't think I've really got to explain why this is the case, since every grass-type Pokemon gets blown out of the water by V-Create, or anything that is weak to V-Create for that matter. And talking about grass-type Pokemon that get destroyed, Tsarina is also an easy OHKO for Victini. While it might not be as prevalent as a Rillaboom, it certainly did take a place in the double OU meta, so that's also a nice skill you can pick up with if you face it. And that's basically all you need to know about its usefulness in terms of Fire Step. In the double OU and also kinda in the 2v2 meta, where there are not really any useful fire type Pokemon besides Incineroar, but that Pokemon fulfills a completely different role on the team, a more defensive one. And it's also for pussies, which makes Victini actually a prime candidate for an offensive fire type. While, let me go back to Victini by the way. While it faces some sort of competition from Entei in that field as an offensive fire type, it also has some other useful parts that Entei just doesn't have. This is mainly in having the better ability, but also but also in having Bolt Strike. I already touched on Bolt Strike at the beginning of the video, so I won't repeat myself. But it's just a damn strong electric type move, which is nice coverage to have for a fire type. To counter like water Pokemon or whatever. Although, don't actually expect it to be used often against water types, since those became kinda unviable because of Rillaboom's oppression, which is mostly in double OU, but also somewhat prevalent in 2v2. Let me switch back to Rillaboom now. There we go. That's why Rillaboom is also such a good partner Pokemon for Victini. It counters water type Pokemon, it counters ground type Pokemon, and it counters rock types Pokemon. All while being able to use fake out support and being able to clean up certain Pokemon after Victini damaged them. Or, with its priority Grassy Glide, put them in range of Victini. And Victini can also kill a lot of the Rillaboom counters with V-Create for ice typings, for example, Bolt Strike for flying types. In conclusion, Victini benefits quite a bit from Rillaboom being in the game, as a partner Pokemon or just as a V-Create victim. Also, quick Victini fact, if you use the bandit set you can Oko Zapdos with V-Create, which is pretty funny. And I also would just recommend the bandit set in general if you're playing WU, but I will touch on that a little later. Let me go back to Victini again. There we go. For now I just wanted to talk about one more set that came around in Gen 8 for 2v2, and also kind of for WU, but not really. To be fair, this is also not really for 2v2, but you know, it doesn't matter. And that is special size spam. With the introduction of expanding force, let me go to it, and a slower psychic terrain setter which has Follow Me, which is of course in DD, Victini actually has a use now as a special attacker or a Trick Room setter. I would say if you go full Trick Room in DD with Victini, just run special, but if you like a mix set because of V-Create and Bolt Strike, that's also fine. Expanding Force is just mad strong, since it's basically like a little bit less powerful than V-Create, but it doesn't give you the reduced stats and it hits both Pokemon on the field on the opponent's side, as long as terrain is up. Alright, so now I'm going back to why I think you should run Bandit, and this is probably the longest part of the video. Let me find, wait. Alright, I'm reading off a script, because this is too much for me to remember, but I completely lost where I was reading, so be right back. Yeah, so, WU is in a weird place when it comes down to OU. A lot of Pokemon from OU... So WU is in kind of a weird place when it comes to OU. A lot of WU Pokemon are viable in OU, but some, if not most, also just miss the mark, since they are barely, just barely not fast or strong enough. So, or there's just a Pokemon in WU that simply outclasses the WU Pokemon, which makes that why you can of course just use your Alolan Marowaks and those type of Pokemon just fine. There's also a boatload of Pokemon which just are not really hitting the mark. And I think choice items can solve that problem pretty decently. With a choice item you can make all of a sudden the Pokemon that are just not really hitting the speed or strength that you want them to hit those stats. And yes, of course, that comes with the downside of being choice locked, but in my opinion that isn't that big of a drawback as people seem to think sometimes. Think about it, you are switching most of the time anyways in OU, and if you just take a little bit of time to just try it, I'm sure you will see that over time you get more comfortable with it. And I started using a lot of choiced item Pokemon at the end of Gen 7, and while at first I sometimes needed to get used to it or adjust to it, eventually I started to get better and better with them, and I think that playing with a lot of Pokemon that are choice locked requires somewhat of a skill, but one that's really easy to learn and can actually give you huge benefits, because in the end your Pokemon are just on roids because of it. They get extremely fast or strong, and I think Victini is one of those Pokemon that falls in the category I just spoke about, since it can sometimes feel a little bit of little underwhelming, but when you slap a band on it, for example, it can Oko Zapdos out of nowhere. So I would really recommend giving Victini a try, especially the bandit set. And in case you are not much of a builder, because I know some people don't really like to build, only play, I left some fun teams for both 2v2 and OU in the pinned comment down below, and that's actually all I have to say, and I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.